Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear students, it's a pleasure. Rashid Khalidi on my right. I don't want to make this sound like a boxing match, but you know. Rashid Khalidi on my right is a specialist of Palestine and the Middle East with a historical twist. Fawaz Girgis from LSE in London is a specialist of the contemporary Middle East.
What was so significant about Sykes-Picot and about the partition of the Eastern Arab world between these two powers that it has come to symbolize and for which it has become a metaphor? You only need to say the words Sykes-Picot in the Arab world and everybody immediately knows what you're talking about. One important reason for the continued significance of these accords is that unlike other Middle Eastern schemes of the great European powers, this one has endured in large measure. In contrast to the lasting partition that Sykes and Picot devised for the Arab Mashriq, similar imperial schemes were completely unsuccessful in other parts of the Middle East. Thus, in 1907, Britain and Tsarist Russia devised a partition of Iran into zones of influence, and they repeatedly occupied parts of Iran before, during, and after World War I. As many people in this audience know, at the same time as the Sykes-Picot partition of the Arab provinces of the Ottoman Empire, Russia, Britain, and France planned a similar partition of the rest of the Ottoman Empire. Soon afterwards, these same powers promised Italy and Greece portions of the former Ottoman domains that later became parts of the Republic of Turkey. Across the borders to Turkey and Iran, they see evidence that other such imperialist plans were foiled and that powerful modern nation states were created in spite of these plans. Were it not for the misguided decisions taken by the U.S. occupation after the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003. The United States decided, for reasons known only to Paul Bremer and Secretary Rumsfeld, Vice President Cheney, the people behind this occupation. These decisions included, notably, the disbanding of the Iraqi army and security forces, the firing of all employees of the state and of state-owned companies, and the banning from public life of all former Baathists. This was a much more severe set of measures than were taken in Nazi Germany by the U.S. occupation after World War II. In other words, Iraq was treated as if the Ba'ath was much worse than the Nazi Party. Is that there currently exist a number of looming threats to the Sykes-Picot frontiers and to the existing states of the Mashriq. The most obvious of these threats are the twin challenges that are posed by Daesh on the one hand and by newly resurgent Kurdish nationalism. Both of these argue for a complete breakdown of every frontier in this part of the world. Players in these civil wars that are also proxy wars in Iraq and Syria. A major escalation of any one of these ongoing interventions, overt or covert, could provoke the domino effect. This is that in spite of all these challenges that threaten the collapse of the states of the Mashriq and the redrawing of borders, sectarianism, Daesh, Kurdish nationalism, external intervention.
Thank you, Rashid, on this joyful note.
Put him on trial.
Well, you know, you never know. It may develop
Thank you, Rashid, for laying out the big arguments. So really, in this particular sense, you have... And the message is the first thing that ISIS did after the capture of Mosul was to basically show Arab and Islamic, the Arab and Islamic masses that look what we are doing. We are basically demolishing the colonial system that was imposed on the Arab Islamic world by the colonial powers. So they are anti-hegemonic in the sense they want to destroy not only the state system, the physical boundaries and frontiers that were imposed on the region by the colonial powers. They want to establish a new system, either Emirats or Caliphates. And I'll talk a bit about the difference between ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Our region is one of the most insecure regions in terms of food security. Blockage in the system. Here comes ISIS, in particular, the creeping sectarianism in Iraq, the American invasion of Iraq, the destruction of state institutions. So again, ISIS and Al-Qaeda offer themselves as an alternative to the failed state system that exists in the heart of the Arab world. An empirical statement about Al-Qaeda Central. Al-Qaeda Central is a product of the global rivalries between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Afghanistan war between 1980 and the mid-1990s. It's an empirical statement. Al-Qaeda is a product of the global Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union between 1980 and the early 1990s in the prisons. And what really happened between 2003 and 2010 is that thousands, if not tens of thousands, of Russian pan-Sunni identity. So again, Saudi Arabia, this particular fierce